On this week's Widnes Rugby Chat, I catch up with coach Simon Finnigan after the opening two games. Hello and welcome to episode 46 of Widnes Rugby Chat with me, James Gordon. I hope you've enjoyed them opening two wins of the season against West Wales Raiders and Whitehaven in the Cup. Before we get going, as usual, thanks to our sponsors, PD Law Solicitors, Arnold Gorse Financial Management, Parklands FC and Whistle. I hope you've tuned in to the two games so far. Of course, sadly, no fans allowed at either game. It was a hard-fought win over West Wales in many ways. West Wales started the game really well, had a lot of energy. You could see it wouldn't last, but of course the red card for the spear tackle on Owen Buckley pretty much put an end to any hopes that they had. Interesting to see Rangi Chase playing well for West Wales. He should do well in League One. I suppose we'll never know. What sort of impact he would have had at Widnes in Super League. We may well not have got relegated. Who knows? It's hard to speculate. But there we have it. And then on Sunday, almost a similar pattern to the game against Whitehaven in the Challenge Cup. Whitehaven scored first, actually had a lot of territory, a lot of possession in the first half, but Widnes proved too strong. Lewis Else impressing at dummy half after Joe Lyons had soaked up a lot of the defensive work in the first 20 minutes or so. The draw for the third round of the Challenge Cup has been made, and Widnes will play Salford away. That game will be played on the weekend of April the 10th, so that's basically the next game after the Newcastle League game. The win over Whitehaven also means that Widnes are in the 1895 Cup semi-final, so 80 minutes away from Wembley. The draw for that competition is going to take place sometime in May. The semi-finals are due to be played at the beginning of June. Let me just double check the date. I think it's the 12th and 13th. It might be the 5th and 6th of June, actually, that semi-final. And then the final, of course, is at Wembley on July 17th to coincide, on the same day as the Challenge Cup final. The RFL are hopeful that the Challenge Cup final will be played in front of half capacity at Wembley, so it'd be around 40,000. I'm not sure what sort of impact that would have on tickets, but hopefully if Widnes get there, there'll be a suitable allocation to ensure that Widnes fans can get to Wembley should we make it. The other teams in the last four are Swinton, York and Featherstone. On this week's show, I had a catch-up with Simon Finnigan on the Monday after the win over Whitehaven. There was no press conference after the game against Whitehaven due to the poor Wi-Fi at the stadium, I believe, which meant Zoom conferences weren't possible. So I caught up with Simon and asked him about how he's felt the two games have gone so far. I asked him about Logan Tomkins. It's a bit of an issue for Widnes this season now, and also looked back at his time briefly, his time as a player, and talked about his playing days at Widnes too. Hope you enjoy this one.
The stamp duty holiday is being extended on all properties until the end of June. So if you're thinking of moving house, make sure you instruct your local solicitors, PD Law, for all your conveyancing needs.
So what's your reaction been to those first two performances?
Yesterday, if we go back and start with the first one, I don't think it wasn't a great game in terms of the ball control, and it was very scrappy. If we're 10 games in, the conditions don't play a part, but I think where we are in terms of only playing twice in a year, the conditions added to, the scrappiness. I don't think no team is fully up to scratch yet. So as much as I want to see perfection and ball control and perfect plays and things like that, we're just not going to have it at the moment. So it was frustrating, but I've got to not to be too frustrated with where we're at in terms of playing two games in a year.
Yeah, I could see you were. I think when the players were coming off at half time, you seemed very frustrated with something. You were waving your arms about and stuff, and you seemed a bit unhappy.
I was more frustrated in the fact that we were in the game, and a bit last week. I didn't think we started the game slowly last week. I thought they started the game very well, West Wales, and I thought Whitehaven again started the game very well. I don't think we have to feel that we have to start the game 100 mile an hour and be on top and dominant. I think we can ease our way into the game and control our sets and defend well, which we were doing. I just thought we got to a point where we were trying to force it because we hadn't scored, and we haven't, instead of just staying in the grind and being happy to do that, I thought we sort of started to overplay and try and find offloads that weren't there and things like that, that's what was frustrating to me. And that's why I was getting frustrated.
Yeah, I suppose in many ways they feel a bit like pre-season games, and I guess you alluded to that in the press conference, before the season. But there were signs in both the games of when you stepped up the intensity that you could see that there was a clear gulf in quality. Like there was certainly after the injury in the West Wales game, but then I think there was when Owen Farnworth had his little bit of a bash with Glenn Riley yesterday. You just saw the intensity level sort of go up a notch.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I thought because our contact's been really good as well. I don't think that's been a problem for us. We got Owen Farnworth and Kenny Baker in particular have been really good in that way. And maybe it is them things that we need a little spark. But the frustration was with the overplaying. I don't think we need to yet. We're trying to imagine that we've been playing a game. Well, we're 10 games in, or we're coming off the back of a previous season, and we're trying to find our touch too early, if that makes sense. It's not going to be there, and it's hard to get that across to them until they experience that, because they're players, aren't they? They're getting giddy. They haven't played for so long, and they're trying to force it. And it's not a bad thing. It's just that if it doesn't come off, that the frustration grows, and we'll get better. There's no doubt about that, because you can see there's glimpses of us where we're really slick and we look good. It's just trying to fine tune it, be a bit more calm and let it come naturally, which it will.
Yeah. I mean, what's the situation with Logan Tomkins at the moment? I know he's had a bit of a niggle with a foot injury. How, what is that situation at the moment?
He's got a problem with his foot. It's a hard one to get to the full bottom of, because it's one of them that needs rehab and it needs time, and you have to take him off his feet and look after him and then see how that progresses. So we're probably going to miss him for a couple of months, maybe 3 months or so. And that's pending if the rehab goes the way it should, which I'm pretty confident it will, but you just don't know on that stage. So it was an injury that he carried over from back in his Salford days that is still there and still niggling away. And the time off has probably been a good thing, but also, the load that's not gone through it hasn't helped either. So it's one of them that the time off's probably stopped it hurting as much, but then he's not been getting load into it. So as soon as we put a little bit on it, it flared up again. So it's disappointing, because he's obviously a key player for us, and we'll miss him clearly. But that's where we're at. We won't be. I hope it won't be the last injury, but I'm pretty certain our squad will get some more like that because of where we are and not playing for so long. So it's just an unfortunate one that's happened to him in that position.
I mean, how much of an issue has that been? Because, he's probably the only specialist hooker in the squad. And I know, obviously, Joe Lyons has started the games there. And I suppose Lewis Ellis has almost turned into a bit of a find based on yesterday's display. But how big of an impact does it have on shaping the team and getting it to play the way that you want them to?
Well, yeah, it has an impact. I can't deny that it would. We don't have, as you say, a specialist 9 in the squad apart from that. And even, I think, under Sheen's before, they didn't have a specialist 9. They were using Jack there and different things like that. So it's clearly been an issue. But, yeah, it's the one thing that we've had, and obviously you guys don't know this, is he hasn't done a lot of field anyway, Logan, at the start of pre-season. So some of these, like Lewis and Joey, have been running in at 9. They're up to speed as much as they possibly can be in a new position. The only difference is the game situations, which we obviously can't replicate and give to them. But in terms of training, they've trained quite a bit of volume there, and I think they're doing a really good job. Like you say, Elsie seems to look like a 9, and Joey is a good rugby player, so he's adapted to it pretty well. And there's always going to be the contact element because they're halfbacks playing in the middle, but I see how tough they are, and that's not been the issue for them at the moment defensively. I think they've held up really well. That they don't miss tackles and they're tough. So there's going to be a knock-on effect, obviously, game to game because it's a different position, and that we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But at the moment, I've been pleased with them, and there's not a lot we can do about it in the other way. So I'm happy how they're going as well.
Yeah, Joey seemed to be blowing quite a bit when you took him off yesterday, which suggested he got through a ton of work in defence. But I mean, Lewis Else seems to have a real good a low centre of gravity, and he even looks like a hooker, like sort of on the field, doesn't he? He almost has that same body shape and that style that you expect from a modern day number 9. Yeah,
and I mean, the game has evolved so much in the last 10 years, hasn't it? Like your fullbacks play halfback, your 9s are pretty much halfbacks at 9. Obviously, there's a contact element. So in terms of attack, there's not a huge difference. The skill level they both got is clear to see. That's not an issue there, how they pass the ball. But you're right. Lewis was probably fortunate yesterday. He come on at a good time, and when Joey was on at the start when we were doing an awful lot of defending, and he gets himself about, so he doesn't get the joy of attacking. He's just there to defend for the first 30 minutes, which we had a little joke about it when he come off. He was goose, but he didn't shirk his job, which is important. And then Lewis, how the game pans out, he got to go on and have some fun with the ball. So next week we might start the game a little bit better and Joey might, attack a little bit more. And then when you throw Elsie on, it's the same for the middles. When they get on the field, sometimes all they do is defend for 10 minutes and they're blown, aren't they? So it's just the way the game goes. But I thought Lewis showed some really good touches and he's a runner, isn't he? So if he can back himself and learn when to run and to take the line on, he is going to be a threat, which he shown yesterday.
And I suppose for Joe as well, I mean, Tim Sheens was trying to turn him into a fullback, I think, last year. So he's gone from being a halfback to a fullback to a hooker. So I suppose fair play to him for putting his hand up and getting stuck into whatever job whatever the coach decides they want him to do.
Yeah, well, one thing about Joey, and I only knew him from afar, and from watching him, he's a brilliant around the group. He's fighting. He was fighting to be halfback and fullback, but that just shows him he's a very hard kid to leave out of the 17 because he can fill all these roles and he does such a good job. And the boys around him realise that he can fill in and he takes it in his stride. He has no issue like that. And he's still a kid. He's still learning. He still hasn't found out what his best position is and how to play that position. So that there's not a rush on that either. Sometimes we have to think you have to get him a position early and stick to it. But the skills he's learning in all these different positions, when he does find his home in his position, he's going to be a quality player, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, with Logan's injury and stuff, have you approached the board about whether you can bring someone else in? Has that been something you've considered?
Yeah, we're looking, but I wouldn't bring someone in that one isn't going to fit in the group long term. I know it could be a loan deal, but they've got to fit into how the dynamic of the group works. And I'm also wary of the two we're talking about here, that I'm not just going to bring someone in and move them away when they're putting so much into it. It's got to be the right fit. If the right fit's out there and it makes sense for the club, then we can do something. But I'm certainly not going to rush into something. And also where the club's been in the past, and this isn't an issue now, it's not, but I've always made it clear that I'm not going to do anything that's going to put the club at risk unless, the long-term future. And I will never go away from that. There might be a bit of short-term pain in terms of my coaching and things like that, but that's part of my job as well. I wouldn't just rush out and say, oh, there's a 9 on the market, we've got to fill a spot, because that's not how we're going to do our business here either.
And I suppose the market's pretty slow moving at the moment anyway because of the situation, and people have got a lot of injuries themselves, and there's not really a great. I mean, even like Lee and Super League are obviously struggling to pull players in, aren't they?
Yeah, and the way the loan market, especially with Super League, with the short-term loan market as well now, there's players that they are just looking to get games. So does that suit our club? I'm not so sure. If we had a huge injury crisis and we were desperate, then that might be a different picture, but I've got to look out for what's best for our club, short, medium, and long term. And if it was to bring someone in just for the sake of it being a 9, I'm not sure that's the best course of action. Certainly not for the group I've got, who are a very good group. So, like I say, it might look a bit of short-term pain and for myself and things like that. But I'm confident and happy with what we've got at the moment. But we are always looking. But that's the same for any position.
How strange has it been having your first 2 games, and especially your first home game, with no fans? I mean, it must almost feel like does it feel like you're a pretend coach at the moment because no one's sort of seen you there?
Yeah, it's actually a really good way of putting it. It does, yeah. It's the right phrase. It does. It was a bit surreal yesterday because I mean, the West Wales, you were there, weren't you?
Yeah.
It was because it's so open. It probably didn't feel like there was lack of fans. You didn't feel it as much. But yesterday, with an enclosed stadium, you could clearly feel it, and it wasn't the same. And yeah, it's odd. There's some pluses to it though. You don't get abuse from fans. that I'm not saying home fans, but you certainly don't get any abuse from the away fans, which is handy. But yeah, I mean, it'll be, especially at Widnes, I can't wait for that to happen. I think it's the same for every team. There's certain spells in the game where you need that crowd, don't you? Even you need sometimes the groans and we might have had yesterday when we kept dropping the ball. It sort of puts a little bit more pressure on the players, and they think, oh, we need to sharpen this up. So yeah, we're missing that, and hopefully it's not too long.
Yeah, I mean, I could certainly imagine there being quite a noise when Will crashed over for his try, because people love a forward bursting onto a ball, and then when he gets over for a try as well on his home debut.
Yeah, and I mean we've had a few, haven't we? And the Widnes people and fans will always get behind local products, and we're having enough of them on the field at the moment. And I'm sure, that there would have been some cheers. Well, his whole family would have been there, so I think they probably would have run on the field if they were there. So it's good to see though. He's worked hard. I watched his interview after, and he was buzzing, wasn't he? So he's they're the things you want to see, and he's earned it. So we're not giving shirts away. He's saying you're going to have to try and pick me here. Like he's trying to get a spot and hold on to a spot, which is what we want.
I mean, how tricky have you found it adapting to part-time? I mean, I know you played a couple of seasons in your career part-time, but how hard have you found it to adapt sort of what your expectations are when you were a player in a full-time environment to what you want to get across when you're coaching part-time players?
I think I was lucky enough to experience it as a player, and the second time I come back to Widnes when I was full-time for a long time, my whole career. And then I come back to part-time. I found it tough as a player. And initially, I mean, and because you've got players that don't see or don't, you perceive that they don't put in as much as they should, but they're working. So it's difficult. But I found that they still do it their own way, and they still produce on a match day. So it's slightly different. And that certainly helped in terms of my coaching. You just got to, there's certain things that we can't control as much being part-time, like diets and things like that, because it's very hard for someone to sit back and say, you can't do this and that when they've been in work 10 hours a day and they've done it. Some of them have done it 5 or 6 years of their career and it's worked. So that's certain things that you can't control to a degree and you don't want to push on them. But there's little things within the game that doesn't change no matter what level you're at. And certain expectations and where we're at, that I'm not sure it doesn't matter if you're playing under 16s or under 19s or you're working all week, because that doesn't change. So that's been my philosophy ever since I've been coaching part-time, that we have certain things that are unacceptable and then certain things that I will not fully judge on. But yeah, there's little things that I won't accept, and my players are aware of them and what they can and can't do.
I mean, you've been pretty good about, the reality of the situation in terms of working. Shane Grady didn't play last night. Is that because he works nights, doesn't he, on a Sunday? He usually seems to struggle for Sunday night matches. Was that to do with that, or was he just? No,
he's had a little slight knock. It wasn't anything that if it was another game that we could have played, he would have played. And the fact that he played big minutes the week before, he played the Warrington, we had a run against Warrington and he played majority of that game. He doesn't miss many trainings. And the fact that you've said he works, himself and Connor, they very often they're either get here just after work and go straight onto the field without any warm-up, or they do field and shoot straight to work. So I'm aware of their load and how much they give, and they're certainly not people that if they've got little knocks and we can afford to give them a week off, we will do, because it is, as much as it's physically stressful, it's mentally stressful for them as well. So I would expect him to be in contention again next week.
And looking ahead to the first league game, then I suppose it was. Well, I asked you this last time. It was Newcastle come out first in the hat. I suppose. I guess a dream. I don't know whether it's a dream start or not, but it certainly writes the headlines for you for straight away. How strange! I know they've changed quite a few of their squad anyway, but how strange is it going to be, sort of going back there so soon?
Yeah, I mean it will be, won't it? And the side part is probably myself and Eamon will get judged on this game as if like we do, won't we? That's the theatre of it all. If they win, they've made the right decision. It's just, but it doesn't work like that. We know that. But it'll be a difficult challenge because they've signed some very good players, Super League Championship players. They're obviously ambitious. We know that, and they're a bit like us. They're not quite there yet, but you can see glimpses of something that's going to happen there. So that will take time. It might happen this week where it all clicks. It might, it might take a few months, but there's certainly going to be a challenge. And I would expect when they do get it right, they'll be up near the topper end of the ladder than they are at the bottom. So because of the quality they've got. So there'll be a lot of, well, not handshakes, fist pumps and that with all the people there, ex-Widnes connection and all things like that. But I mean, once the game starts, it's the 17 that play, don't they? I can't influence anything. Eamon can't influence it. Dennis, none of them people that the story will be about can do anything about the game. So yeah, it'll be good to go back up there, but it'll be also good to get it out of the way and just focus on the rest of the league.
I suppose you won't be booed because there'll be no fans there, so you won't be booed for jumping ship.
Yeah, I'm not. Well, you wouldn't thought so anyway. Yeah, I've only had really good relationships with Newcastle, and I was up front with everything that happened and how it happened. So, and they knew the reason why I chose what I did. So it's not, as much as I probably left at the time where the season was starting, but when is a good time to do that. So so obviously there'll be some negative towards that, but in terms of relationships, we still have a really good relationship.
And then obviously the Challenge Cup draw come through this morning, and another one of your old teams, Salford, coming ahead. The fixture God seems to be pointing in your favour at the moment in terms of storylines and stuff. It'd be a good test, I suppose, against a Super League team just to try out even your own coaching methods, I guess, and you can go into that match with almost nothing to lose.
Yeah, it's an odd one, isn't it? Because I mean, it's where this competition breaks away. So obviously we want to do well in the Challenge Cup and things like that. But the way the fixture list is panning out for us in Championship, we don't have a lot of free weekends. And I'm still unsure of how we will react week to week. I'm not sure at this stage where we're at. Week to week games is going to be a huge benefit for us in the long run. I certainly, there'll be some players that possibly haven't played that will play in that game for sure, because we don't have reserves and we don't have unless we have injuries, which we clearly don't want, but they're going to happen. There's some people that haven't played yet. So they will certainly play. The ones that haven't played it, going into that game, I can pretty much confident say that now. So, because we need to get minutes in them and they haven't played for so long. So that's going to happen. But, it's a good test for us, aren't they? They're a team that's, I suppose their roadmap and how they've done it has been really impressive, haven't they? They've gone outside the box and recruited really well under Watson before Marshall. I think they do it the right way and really plan and think about how they're going to recruit for the team and how they play. So it's a good little challenge for us, and they've got ambitions to be at the top of Super League. So I'm sure they'll be looking at us and thinking, well, this is a good draw for us. We need to be ready and to get into the next round of the Challenge Cup. So, and there's also that other dimension for the Widnes fans that Kev's there. So, yeah. I mean, he's been brilliant for Widnes, and I'll always speak highly of him. I played with him at Huddersfield, and he was a fantastic pro off the field and on the field. So, and he was a great for this club as well. He's got his negative people at this place, but I think that's unfair. He was exceptional for this club, and I know him as a person as well. And I think everyone that's played with him knows what he's like off the field as well. He only puts everything into the club he plays for.
Yeah, he's a great guy, Kevin. To be fair, he was on a podcast a few weeks ago, and I think he put a few truths right, which maybe changed some people's perceptions of him. You know, the people, like I say, the people who'd been a bit negative about what he'd done. I suppose the nature of the start of the season, it's been a bit funny for you because, you know, clearly you'll play this league game this week, and then it'll be the cup again, and then you know, it's a bit disjointed, isn't it, in terms of getting some momentum into the league campaign?
Yeah, it is. But the one thing I think about the format, how it has been until it broke up, is it added a little bit more intensity to these early games, these Challenge Cup, because obviously the other cup competition, there's something there, isn't there? There was semi-finals, and clearly every team that was in it wanted to get as far as they can, you know, everyone. So it's added more intense games at the start of the year, which is clearly helping us because it doesn't feel as disjointed because we played two, you know, pretty intense games that we will go into next week feeling a bit better, but then we break up again. But then, you know, you can get into the league, and by that stage, we've probably had, well, we would have had 4 games under our belts and feel like we're back rugby players again, you know? So I think that part of it's really helped. I think that format probably needs to stay, in my opinion, moving forward, because it does add more excitement to the beginning of the season, and it doesn't seem as, oh, it's Challenge Cup, they won't play this player, that, you know, I just think it's been a real plus, you know, and you can clearly see that everyone's trying to get to that semi. Not everyone did, but they, you know, put enough good teams into to make it enjoyable.
And I suppose you're only 80 minutes from coaching at Wembley now, in theory, you know, having got to that semi-final.
Yeah, and I mean, the boys that were here when it was last go, and they made that final, didn't they?
Yeah.
So they had the huge result at Lee in that semi-final. So, and again, yeah, it don't matter what level you play at, you want to make finals. It doesn't matter what cup competition it is. You want to get there, and we're close now, and that's something good to look at. I think, is it May? I'm not sure when the next.
Yeah, the draw is in May, and then the semi-finals, I think June, the first week of June or second weekend of June. It's because obviously they have to wait to see if anyone makes it through to the quarterfinals. You know, because
that, I mean, that is it. Hopefully, we've got fans back there, and you can imagine whoever we get on that semi-final day, there'll be thousands of Widnes fans there, won't they? Because the Widnes fans travel regardless of what the fixture is, but you can imagine a semi-final that they can get in, especially if we get drawn at home. You know, it'll be some event here, won't it, that semi-final, and if we can have our fans back by then.
Yeah. I mean, what about Newcastle had the weekend off, and you played as a result of this cup format. Do you think that'll have any bearing on next week?
I think it'll, I think it will help them. Yeah, I think, because again, I've said previously, I'm not sure week to week is the best course of action for everyone at the moment. I understand. I'm not complaining, because that's how it is. It's got to be done that way. But I just think in terms of our bodies and where we're at in pre-season, and it was disjointed for everyone again. Just the ideal situation, it would, you know, they've played 2 games, I think, now, and then they get a week off to probably get over them aches and bruises and train properly, and then go into another game. I think there's pluses certainly to that, especially at this start of the year. So, and having a new coach and a new team, he could go away and really get stuck into them in training and what they need to fix. So I think that there's plenty of pluses for them, but, you know, us having an extra game has helped as well. You know, if we got beat by West Wales and we didn't play yesterday, I think we would have definitely been underdone. The week off wouldn't have helped us at all. So there is pluses and negatives to both sides. But I think the longer the season goes on, a week to week, I think there'll be a knock-on effect. So, you know, I just think that's normal. You look at Super League and NRL, it's difficult, isn't it, how that's managed. So, but again, we can't do anything about that. So I'm not complaining. I'm looking ahead and seeing what could be out there further down the line.
Yeah. As mentioned before, let's talk a bit about your sort of association with Widnes dating back to when you were a player. Obviously, you were in Australia. Did you come straight from Australia to Widnes? Was that the reason you came over, or were you coming home anyway?
I was in the Penrith reserve grade team, and I'd already spent a year, or from the 19s to reserves, and then the new coach come in. And I didn't think I was going to progress there, and I ended up having a conversation with the old coach, who was Roy Simmons at the time, and he said he knew Steve Carter at Widnes, and he said there might be an opportunity if you want to go over there. So it just come about by that. Steve Carter, I think, spoke to Neil Kelly and said, yeah, you can come over for a trial. So there was no guarantees, and I come over for a trial, and obviously then I got signed up. So it was more, I always fancied coming back to England. I wasn't really sure how that would look and what England looked like, because I was only 4 when I left. So it was more of a, like you do when you're 19, you don't look at the outsides of it. You just think, yeah, I'll do it. And it worked out fine. So, that's it. That's how I got over it initially.
Yeah, and the 2003 season was a fairly solid season, and then the 2004 sort of stayed up last game of the season, didn't we, I think? And then what was it like being part of that team that got relegated that year? Because in 2005, because, it was a bit of a, clearly it's a downer getting relegated, clearly, but what was it like from a player's point of view? Yeah,
it wasn't nice. I mean, I was still only young then, and I just don't think the years from probably 4 to 5, we got, and it's the same for most clubs. It's easy for me now that I understand the game a bit more, that I just don't think the recruitment and how we went about it was the right way. I think certainly you look at 2002, they had a team that was tough and stayed in games, similar to 2003, and then you start to change how you recruit and probably look ahead, too far ahead, instead of trying to consolidate and build slowly. I don't think we got that right, and that obviously was a knock-on effect, and we ended up getting relegated. It's hard to get out of that in results when you're stuck in them. I was disappointed that we got, obviously disappointed. I didn't want to leave. I was happy where I was in Super League. It was 2003 especially was brilliant. That the first or second year it was outstanding, all the crowd and things like that. But I think that sort of set the tone for the next few years at Widnes. I think the recruitment and how they spent that money wasn't good, and that continued in that spiral for a good number of years. What
was it that made you come back? It was the last season in Championship, wasn't it? I think that you came back, and obviously the club was a lot different then from when you'd left. What was it that made you come back at that point?
I was in the last. I had a year to run at Huddersfield. Again, I had the feeling that I wasn't going to be first choice, and I was on the out of there. There was nothing that was told. I just had that feeling, and I had a couple of different options in Yorkshire still that I could have stayed, and I just thought the time was right because I'd travelled for 2 or 3 years, and I was ready to not travel as much. And if an opportunity come over this way, then I thought I'd take it. So, and then it come through that Widnes were interested again. So I just thought it might be time to come back this way and stop the traveling and finish my career over this way, which, it didn't pan out that way because I ended up getting injured. But that was the plan. I was a bit over traveling, to be honest. I spent 2 or 3 years going the other side of Yorkshire, and I just felt like it was time to come back.
Was that why you finished early? Because, what were you, like 32, 33 when you decided to finish? Was that because of the injuries?
Yeah, I had a bad leg injury at Widnes when we come back into Super League that year, but it was more to do with my neck and shoulders, to be honest. I had a couple of neck operations, one at Huddersfield, another one when I come back to Widnes, and just a wear and tear. And now I ended up going and doing a season at league and playing pretty much every game, but the recovery and the aches and all them type of things that you get just weren't worth it anymore. And I remember coming back into pre-season, I asked for an extra week off because part of me was thinking I can't get through this again. And then I come back in, I can remember it clearly now. We'd run against Wigan Reserves in a training day on a Saturday, and I was just not interested. And then after I walked off and told Paul Rowley, I said, I'm done. That's me, finished. And he just said, go home and think about it over the weekend. But I knew straight away I just couldn't do it anymore. My neck, like even now, my neck is sore. In the winter, aches. I get headaches and things like that because of my neck. So it's hard. The hardest thing about when you know it's time is the pre-season. I just couldn't get up for it anymore and train. It was my body was too much. So I just thought I can't go through another year just hanging on it, and because I don't know what ability you can play at, and I just couldn't be bothered putting myself through it anymore. So I knew the time was right.
And a bit of a nice quirk for you though. Your last ever game was against Australia, wasn't it, for Ireland at the World Cup?
Yeah, it was. I mean, we didn't score a try that day, which it wasn't the greatest game, but it was. It was, and it's a shame because I didn't know it at the time. It'd be my last game. It was that whole World Cup was, unbelievable because we played England at Huddersfield. I think there was 30,000 there, which is, it was something special. And then the World Cups with Ireland have always been special to me. I look back at it. It's not a regret. I would have loved to have known that was going to be my last few games because I might have enjoyed it a little bit more and relaxed a little bit more. It's a good tour anyway, but you're still fully into it, and it would have been nice to know that might have been my last few games. It might have went out a bit different, but yeah, it's not a bad last game to finish on.
Did you get anyone's shirt?
I got Nate Miles.
Right.
I've still got it somewhere, I think. It's one of the toughest games I've ever played in because I played 13 and all we did was tackle for about 60 odd minutes. But the highlight of that whole game was, and all the Ireland boys will say, we obviously knew we weren't going to win the game. That's obvious, but we pulled up into the car park and the Australian bus was coming towards us and we were going the other way on a one-way street. We made them have to reverse all the way back. So that was the biggest cheer of the game because we knew we weren't going to win, but we were one up before the kickoff because we made them reverse and change spots. So it was a good game, and it was a great trip on the way back. The Aussies all serious and going on to the quarterfinals, and they're on the same plane as us, and we're all on the Guinness singing songs, and they're just thinking, how good is this?
Excellent. So, before we finish off, what's your vision for your sort of next few years, and what are you hoping to achieve now as a coach?
I think one of the things that obviously my job and what we want to do is I'd like to, certainly in the short term and by the end of this year, I'd like to see that there's certainly a stamp of how I want to coach and the style of play that we want to produce and look good at doing that. I like to think that how we play the game is a good way to play and all them things. And I'd like to look back at the end of this year and see that there's certain style now that you can associate with Widnes, which is our style. That's a job of mine. And I'd like also to look back and say that every player that's played has got better. That's, as a coach, that's my number one job, first and foremost. So I've got to make my players better. We can talk about where we finish and our ambition of where we want to get to, but that's all got to start with my players getting better every week. And at the end of the year, whether they are here with us or not, they've got better and they've improved. And if we keep doing that year after year, then the long-term goals will look after themselves. Like I've mentioned, Salford and all these clubs, they get to where they've got to, and Huddersfields and them and other clubs like that, because the coaches have got their players better. And that's certainly it's always been a goal of mine, and it's something I take really personal, that I've got to make my players better, and the rest will look after itself. If I do that and my staff do that, we will get better, and we'll start to climb and reach the goals we want. We clearly want to be back in Super League. I can't put a time frame on that, but certainly the short-term goals that I can do is make every individual that comes through this club a better person than when they arrived, and that's a goal of mine and something I'll always look back on and see if we had done that right. In terms of the club, I mean, we all know where it's been, the history that's happened recently is pretty dark, and it needs, that can't be ignored. We have got a responsibility to make sure we never see that again. And again, if that delays where we need to get to, that's certainly all right with me. I'm fully aware of what's happened and why we can't do that again, and I'm on board with that. If it takes time to get that long-term goal and we're sustainable and in a really good place, then that is a win for us, because I've mentioned many times, I will not be happy or I will not put this club at risk while I'm here. That's certainly not something I'm going to do. And again, if there's a bit of short-term pain towards me, then so be it, because I live in this town as well. I'm responsible for certain things that happen, and I'm not going to walk out this door knowing that I put this club at risk by me being reckless with things like that. It's just not going to happen. So again, that doesn't always put me in a great short-term light, but I can't live with the alternative, and I won't do. So that's where we're at, short, long, and medium term.
So thanks as always to our sponsors, PD Law Solicitors, Arnold, Gorse Financial Management, Whistle and Parklands FC. Widnes' next game is this coming Sunday, or I suppose it depends when you're listening to this, but it's on Easter Sunday away at Newcastle. The game is available to watch live on the RFL's Our League app. I believe it's £5. You have to book it before the weekend, I think. If you don't do it in time, it's £10 on the day. I believe I'll be doing commentary on BBC Radio Merseyside as well. So if you can't tune in and watch the game, please do have a listen on the radio as well. And the next game after that will be that Salford away game in the Cup. And then the countdown goes on until fans can return to games at all levels of rugby league. In the meantime, please do stay safe. Please also drop any comments, feedback, questions or suggestions to me on Twitter or, of course, through the Widnes Rugby site on the Widnes Rugby Forum. And I'll see you in 2 weeks' time.